You're listening to the Sales for the Nigerian Wedding Industry podcast, and I'm your host, Abuja-based event photographer Tabeshiman Ayede. Now, before I start, I'd like to apologize for the background noise you're going to experience. I have the baby here with me because we're all COVID up at home because of the crisis, and my older one is in the living room right now watching Dragon Balls. So, apologies for any noise that you may hear during the recording of this episode. Now, I recap. The previous episodes that we've done so far were they dealt with intros to personal selling, and then how we can make wedding expos and bridal shows more effective for us. And then, of course, there was also that COVID episode about how we can continue with personal sales in times of crisis. Now, before we begin, I have a bonus reference material for you guys, and that's related to the bridal show episode. There's another podcast I listen to from time to time. It's the Six Figure Photography podcast by the photographer Ben Hartley. Now, if you go to the podcast on episode 134, I think it was titled How to Make Bridal Shows Worth Your Time. If you agreed with the main thesis that I had in my own show, that they can be effective for you so long as you have a plan, then I'm sure that you're going to enjoy this podcast as well. Although he has different ideas regarding what plan that you should come up with, because his is much more detailed. He has plans for merchandising. That's how you show your wares at the booth, ideas about booth setup, and but we agree on the idea of having a sales process. So the main thesis is the same. So long as you have a plan, you can make bridal shows work for you. Again, that is the Six Figure Photography podcast by the photographer Ben Hartley, and it's episode 134. Now today, we're going to go on with some more on personal selling. Now, if you remember from the earlier episodes, I defined personal selling or personal sales as the practice of using a salesperson or a sales force to sell the product face to face with the customer. Now, if you remember, I also mentioned that personal sales can also occur using the phone, using email, using WhatsApp, using Instagram DM, and any other outlets or resources available to you. This is my own personal opinion, because for me, the distinguishing thing for personal sales is the interpersonal nature of the communication. So it's not necessarily that you're face to face 100% all the time, but that whenever you do see face to face, or whatever medium you use, whether it's WhatsApp, Instagram, or if you're making a phone call, the nature of the conversation is more interpersonal in nature. Now, I also mentioned that the mechanics of personal selling are your attitude, your appearance, and the product knowledge. Because when we use personal selling, that's how we aim to persuade. We try to have the right attitude, the appropriate appearance, and the right amount of product knowledge. That is what will make us come across as a credible professional. So what's the goal of personal selling? It's to inform possible clients about our products, to encourage them to buy or our services, and also to engage them in a trial. That's a way of gaining the commitment. Now, not all services or not all products are suitable for personal selling. I'm going to mention this because not all of us in the wedding industry deal with products. So, for those of you who have listened to prior episodes, you're aware that I'm a photographer, so there's part service and there's part product because I have physical deliverables. And I guess that would also be the same if you are a cake artist. Sorry, I'm not sure what they're called. Cake art. I think that'll be more product. But then there's some professionals in the wedding industry that are pure service, like wedding planning. There's not anything physical you can quantify, and there are no physical deliverables. So that's more of 100% service. So, in my own opinion, not all services or products are suitable for personal selling. Now, for high-priced products and services like photography, that's one of the more expensive parts of your wedding budget. That's apart from the hall. I think the hall will take up the most of the budget. So the high price products and services like photography, wedding planning, the cake and catering, etc., etc. But maybe not small shops, except if the small shops is a standalone service and an undifferentiated service. So I think the high price products and services are going to be very suitable for personal selling. So, photographers listening to the podcast, wedding planners, cake artists, caterers, I think personal selling is going to work for you. Now, it also applies to services that have complex features. Like I mentioned, photography has different deliverables and is driven by aesthetics, so there's some complexity there. It's not as straightforward as the mixologist serving drinks, in my own opinion. No offense to mixologists. And also, wedding planning also has some complexity built into it because they're coordinating a myriad of services and they also have to execute the personal vision of the client. And I think catering also has some complexity with it because they have to balance different palates and culinary outcomes given the budgets that the client has. So, in my own opinion, those are the products and services that will be most suitable for personal selling. If you have a difference of opinion, let me know in the comments or in the DMs if you hit me up on Instagram. Now, what's the advantage of personal selling? It gives the customer a high degree of attention. So that is good for toasting, as those of us of a certain generation used to say. So it makes for good toasting or pursuing your customer. So that's the advantage of personal selling. We'll show them that we'll make them feel like they're having a high degree of attention paid to them. Now it also allows for message customization. What that means is that in our businesses we all have our main marketing message that we have to tailor or break down depending on what mediums we use or who we happen to be with at the time. And so personal selling allows for that. So that way, if you're with your more upscale and polished customer, you're going to be able to highlight the more sophisticated and polished aspects of your message. And if you're with more down-to-earth type people, then you can also tone down aspects of your message. So that's the advantage. Because there's a lot of freestyling involved in personal selling and you're face to face with your clients, you're going to have to adapt the message as you go along. It's also highly interactive if you're an engaging communicator. But don't worry if you're not born an engaging communicator, because effective communication is a learned skill like many other skills. So long as you're willing to put in the time and you have the aptitude to learn, it's something that you can work on. Advantages of personal selling. Okay, there's a high potential for developing relationships. The reason why this is important, in my own opinion, is because I think we're in this business, the wedding business, because we're trying to maximize the lifetime value of our customers. So we're not just trying to deliver value to the current bride or groom that we're trying to serve, but also we're trying to get referrals and repeat business from them in the future. For those of you who can secure those kinds of businesses, the cake artists among us will appreciate what it is that I'm talking about. So you make the wedding cake, but you're also looking towards doing the cake for the baby reveal, the cake for the birthday party, and the cakes for people who are within the personal network of the bride and the groom. So that is one advantage of personal selling. Then it also allows for more persuasive impact because you are the face to face. Sorry, excuse me, my baby was getting a little too adventurous there, so I had to. Okay, alright, I'm back. Where was I? Okay, yes, so it has a more persuasive impact, and that's because since we're face to face with the client, we have the opportunity to close the sale, and that's to ask for the buying commitment, which is not something you can easily do if you have an email type campaign or adverts on Instagram and those sorts of things. Now, what are the disadvantages of personal selling? There's a lot of cost involved, and it is labor intensive. Now, for those of us like me who do a lot of the personal selling myself, we might not be it might not be obvious to us the level of the cost involved, but just pretend for a moment that you had to hire someone else to do the personal selling and you had to pay them a living wage or a comparative wage, and they do it the same number of days, the same number of hours that you do, and then you get a sense of how expensive personal selling can be. So it's really labor intensive. If you don't think it's labor intensive, then perhaps you need to come up with a calculation of what your time is worth, and then you'll get a sense of how much personal selling is costing you. It's also a lot of work because you have to do in-person visits, lots of phone calls, lots of emails, lots of WhatsApp follow-up, FaceTime for your Apple people, etc., etc. Then the main disadvantage of personal selling that I hear business folks talk about from time to time is they say it reaches only a limited number of customers, and so because of that, you can't scale. Now, for those of you who listen to other podcasts, particularly people in the tech space, you might be familiar with Ben Horowitz, I think. So folks like Ben Horowitz are with the opinion that you don't have to worry about scaling for now because things like personal selling put you in touch with your customer. You really need to know your customer, and with time, that knowledge is going to be useful when you start scaling your selling. For those of you who are going to be involved in internet funnels and those kinds of things, and for those of you who are not going to go down that route, it's still going to come in handy, personal selling, because from what you learn about interacting with your customers and what they like and what they don't like, you're going to be able to make sure that your staff are adequately trained to sell on your behalf over time. So that's it for today. More material that you can look into. You can, if you just Google Jim Riley, he's a UK business writer and he has some fantastic online resources about business in general and some of the things that we've spoken about today. And apart from that, I think any academic material or any university library books that you have on marketing or marketing communications are going to come in handy, because in my own experience, my introduction to personal selling and understanding how it relates to marketing came about because I read my mom's book on advertising, which was a book written in 1978 or 79. It was a book on advertising that was part of her study material while she was studying for her MBA in public relations. So don't think that because these books are old and stuffy that there's nothing to learn. There's a lot of information that you can get from them. So don't forget the material, or you could say the assignment that I'm giving you guys today. Google Jim Riley, UK business writer, for his online resources. Don't forget to check out Ben Hartley's podcast, which is a six-figure photography podcast, episode 134, how to make bridal shows worth your time. That ties into the last episode that we did. And don't forget about academic and university books. So as usual, I would like for you to like, comment, or share the podcast on whatever catcher it is that you use, whether Google, Apple iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Overcast, and all those lovely services out there. Don't forget to follow or DM me on Instagram. I am there at Ayede_photography. Ayede is AYEDE. That is A for Alpha, Y for Yankee, E for Echo, D for Delta, and E for Echo _photography. Alpha, Yankee, Echo, Delta, Echo _photography. Thank you very much for listening. I'll catch you guys on the next episode.